It's hard to believe it's almost that time of year again. E3 is yet again upon us, and what usually feels like Christmas for gamers is going to be a bit odd this year. For the first time in 20 years, Sony has chosen to skip E3 entirely. Instead, Square Enix will be taking their elusive primetime slot, with both Final Fantasy VII Remake and The Avengers slated to be shown off at this E3. Square Enix plans to have an absolutely stellar show, even telling their investors to make sure they tune in. So in this video, we'll be assessing the likelihood of all the things we hope to see, and making some solid predictions on what the JRPG giant will show, starting with the release of Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind. Kingdom Hearts 3, much like the Final Fantasy games of late, saw incredibly strong sales and great critical reception. But as the weeks went by, fans completed the game, and they were left to reflect on it, eventually leading them to feel disappointed. Problems with the game's story and gameplay quickly became apparent, and while Square Enix has a new critical mode update, which veteran players got a big increase in the game's enjoyment, it now leads us to wonder what's next for the franchise. And while the game's director, Tatsuya Nomura, has shared some details just recently that aren't even exactly details, like, does anyone know what a limit cut episode is supposed to be? We are now hoping to get clarification on the DLC soon. Instead of multiple small DLCs or any sort of season pass, Nomura aims for Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind to be one massive DLC. Most developers try to release DLC within 1 year of the game's release, so as not to lose player interest, most likely making this massive content expansion slated for around November or December, meaning that right now is the perfect time to begin boosting expectations for it. I would call the likelihood of this one as 50-50. Nier Automata has just recently hit 4 million in sales, meaning that the game has sold as much as Dragon Quest XI and Kingdom Hearts 2. The demand for this franchise, and more Yoko Taro intellectual property, is at an all-time high. Square Enix and Yoko Taro are undoubtedly working on a follow-up to capitalize on the tremendous success of the game. If anything does get announced though, expect it to be no more than a brief teaser trailer. As for the likelihood of this happening, I'm just going to say it's possible. And then there's the big boy. There's no doubt in anyone's mind Final Fantasy VII is by far going to be the focal point of the show, and the reason so many of us will be tuning in to watch it. What can we expect to see though? While Sony's State of Play trailer primarily focused on revealing Aerith, I'm quite certain that Tifa Lockhart will be the focal point of Square Enix's E3 content. No matter how Tifa looks, you can expect a flurry of unwelcome comments about her one way or the other. But there are even more crucial matters at hand than just character reveals. Square Enix needs to talk very firm details about the game, and when I say very firm details, they need to discuss things such as the game's battle system, and just what type of combat players can actually expect, and help silence a lot of negative speculation and baseless criticisms. I don't expect anything crazy like showing off summons, but show us some sort of breakdown of how this combat differs from the original Final Fantasy VII. Not only that, but the multi-game structure is in desperate need of solid details, more than anything maybe. Square Enix needs to flat out state how many parts there are going to be, whether that's 2 episodes or 3. Once fans have a solid idea of what to expect, it'll be much more easy for them to market the game to us when we know exactly what it is that we're paying for. Oh, and then there's this massive elephant in the room. This game has to do the thing that Square Enix games sure love taking their time doing. It has to actually release, and do so in the lifetime of its primary consumer base. I get the feel that most people are expecting a solid release date at E3. Nomura, the game's director, has already said that the preparations are in place leading up to the game's launch, something that would usually be done if the game is 12 to 18 months away from release. That would be extremely ideal, but I know Square Enix, and it's very rare that we get a solid date right off the bat. More than likely, we're going to get a release window first. For those of you who don't know, a release window is just an approximate time for a game's release. That means expect to see a nice coming 20 2019, coming this winter, early 2020, with plans for an actual release date in the coming months. I believe Square Enix is going to give away a lot for Final Fantasy fans that have been patient all this time, but they aren't going to give away the whole farm so easily. So in total, you should expect a glorious Tifa Lockhart reveal, a probably 3 to 5 minute trailer, some clarification on combat details, hopefully a firm number of episodes for the multi-game structure, and a launch window that is somewhere between November of this year and March 2020. Or at least that's what I believe. The likelihood? Basically guaranteed. And since Tifa is likely to be revealed, you can also expect them to tie that into Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. We've known for a while that Tifa is coming to the second season of Dissidia NT, as data miners have found references to her in the game's data, and all the data they found so far has been 100% accurate in predicting all the characters, with the exception of Xenos because he kinda came out of nowhere. This would be the perfect time to tie all that in together. The likelihood is almost guaranteed, although the timing may not happen exactly at E3. Oh, and this one has been coming up ever since Final Fantasy 15 launched. It's inevitable for me to talk about it. Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16, before we even know a single detail about it whatsoever, even the fact that it exists, is still somehow the most curious I've ever been about a mainline Final Fantasy game. Coming off of all of the tremendous feedback from Final Fantasy 13 and 15, I'm really curious to see what they'll build. And with Final Fantasy 13 being shown off in 2005, alongside the game we now called Final Fantasy 15, and Final Fantasy 14 1.0 being shown off in 2009, even earlier if you count the tech demo that happened in 2005. It's been around 10 years or more since we've seen a brand new Final Fantasy world, at least for the mainline series. All of the Final Fantasy games that have rolled out over the past decade or so have been with us for a really long time. That even includes Final Fantasy VII Remake, so it would be great to finally see something truly new. That said, don't expect to see Final Fantasy 16. For starters, the primary focus is Final Fantasy VII Remake and The Avengers, so I wouldn't expect to see a teaser, or even a quick logo. Also, the game is almost without question going to be a PlayStation 5 game, so until we're talking about PlayStation 5, actually talking about it, Final Fantasy 16 can just remain a pipe dream for now. The likelihood? Always possible, but highly unlikely. All in all, Square Enix should have a great showing for E3 2019. It's scheduled to take place Monday, June 10th at 6 p.m. PDT. I will be streaming it here live, so you won't want to miss it. And I won't have my Moogle sensor when I'm live, so hopefully when they show some FF7R stuff, I can try to control myself and not get demonetized. So Ultima Weapons, what are you most looking forward to at E3? Final Fantasy VII Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC, The Avengers project, or maybe even some new IPs? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let me know in the comments below. And if you've been enjoying my content, be sure to check out the Patreon for the Night Sky Prince. People like my incredible supporter, Sutogo Ichigo, are helping me provide 4 to 5 high-quality, non-stop Final Fantasy and JRPG videos weekly, and they do this by helping me keep the lights on. Nothing makes me happier than making these videos for you guys, and I'm so grateful I can keep doing this. Shout out to Sutogo and the rest of the Ultima community.